Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis, and this is where we talk honestly about midlife, hormones, mindset, and becoming who you want to be next. Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis. Today I'm speaking with Adrian Stone, a holistic nutritionist with a degree in nutritional medicine and a certified naturopath. He has over 13 years of clinical experience and is the co-founder of Living Holistic Health, a highly regarded naturopathy and nutritional medicine health clinic based in Geelong, servicing clients across the Geelong region and via telehealth across Australia. Adrian has assisted numerous patients experiencing chronic health conditions throughout his clinical practice. His primary mission is to uncover the underlying causes of his patients' health issues, focusing on addressing the root causes rather than simply managing symptoms with superficial solutions. He is dedicated to asking the important questions and finding answers where other practitioners may not, striving to provide patients with the care and solutions they need. Adrian has extensive knowledge of cutting-edge pathology and functional testing. This expertise enables him to offer his patients valuable insights into the causes of their health concerns, often identifying issues that might otherwise go unnoticed. Adrian has a number of other credentials, which I will also include in the show notes. Welcome to the show, Adrian. I'm very excited to speak with you.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you very much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'll start off. Can you please share a little about yourself, what you do and how you support women in perimenopause?
Yeah, certainly. So as you've said so eloquently there in the introduction, I'm a clinical nutritionist and naturopath in Geelong, and we see a lot of clients, female clients going through that sort of midlife period, navigating many of the challenges as they transition through their hormonal stages, through perimenopause and menopause, etc. So now, really, for me, it's about getting these women in, and they'll often come in with a range of symptoms. Not all of the symptoms are exactly the same for each particular person. So for me, it's about listening to their story, really trying to understand them as an individual and what's led up to their life through this point, their health challenges, their family's health history, other issues they may have had, etc. And just work out exactly where they're at on their journey, and then analyze their health, work out what are the key strengths and the key weaknesses, and see if we can maximize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses through nutritional and naturopathic treatments, which involve a variety of things: lifestyle interventions, diet plans, certain foods, maybe some mindfulness techniques, some supplementation, working with GPs, co-prescribing with medications, etc. So that's broadly what we do, but it is very much, from my aspect, I try to keep everybody, as an individual. I don't try to sort of have a blanket approach with every single person, like a protocol, for example, or anything like that. It's more about listening to each individual person and working out exactly what's going on with them, because not one solution is going to be the same for every single.
I know, speaking to a lot of women, one of the most common things that I hear is not being heard. And that's a really big one. So the fact that you're actually taking each individual as an individual and listening to them and then adapting according to what they need.
I think thank you. I think that's one of the strengths really of nutritional and naturopathic functional medicine, is the fact that because we listen to each individual circumstance and take into account the person as a whole and everything that's gone into them, it's not about managing a condition per se, because when you manage a condition per se, like a pathology or a disease or something, usually there'll be like one solution, right? From a medical point of view, that's very much how it's focused, which is important. But when you look at it functionally, there can be a variety of levers you can pull and a variety of things you can do for the person. So it is when you adopt and you treat a person in that way, you have to listen very attentively, because you're analyzing many, many different factors that go into their health, not just they have menopause, for example, or whatever it might be, right? Or they have IBS or whatever it might be, insomnia, many, many of the things, obviously, that a lot of women tend to unfortunately have to deal with during these stages. Yeah, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it. And I think looking at health that way and these complex conditions that way, hopefully then if we're able to make some suggestions and give some treatments that, a person can take on board, like nutrition, for example, changing things in their diet, changing things in their sleep routine, changing their exercise around, they actually feel a bit more empowered because they're actually able to do certain things for themselves to help themselves rather than just rely on a gel or a marina or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Because you kind of feel like if I'm waiting on an external person or thing, if I stop X, then what happens? Whereas when it's
Mm.
up to you, you have the power.
Yeah,
And having control for your life is huge, isn't it?
correct. That's exactly right. And often when health is reduced to, very, very sort of mechanistic things and very much, a person's body is split apart into all of these separate systems and is just treated as, just looking at, say, mood or just looking at insomnia or, lack of sleep or whatever it might be. The bigger picture is often getting missed. So how did that person actually get to that point? Yes, I understand that, for example, they might have a problem with sleeping. Okay, so we give them a medication to help with their sleep, right? But how did they get that way? What other things are actually going on that's caused that particular issue where they can't get to sleep? So rather than taking something to force them to sleep, how about you work on those other factors that have led them to that point? Because often, if you don't, those things manifest as bigger issues down the track. And if we're talking about this particular change in hormonal levels, for example, with perimenopause and menopause, that's not an isolated just to hot flashes, for example. I guess it's not an isolated change in a woman's body, because what will happen is if the things aren't adequately addressed to balance things up and prepare a woman to go through this stage of her life, she opens the door to things like cardiovascular disease, to issues with bone density, things like osteopenia and osteoporosis, memory changes, advanced aging, accelerated aging, low libido. There's just a plethora of things that could be coming on down the track where you want to intervene if you can in a person's life to change the way that they've been living to help them navigate those challenges potentially coming up.
Yeah, that's so huge, isn't it? I like the way that you articulated all that because you spelled it out quite simply. A lot of the times when you speak to experts, they talk about with jargon and medical terminology that a lot of what ladies that will be listening are not going to comprehend. Whereas breaking it down the way that you just have makes it quite simple for people to comprehend. It's very important, I think.
Oh, thanks, Terry.
You know?
That's right, Manny. Yeah. Well, one of the things I've tried to do, and I think it's a lifelong learning. And I've been quite blessed. I've had quite a few patients over the years, and so I've listened to a lot of stories about women who have gone through these challenges that we're speaking about, and not every single story is the same. So I learn things along the way that challenge me and help me gain a different perspective. And then I bring that obviously through into my practice as well and help me be able to be a bit more conscious and open-minded about what are all the possibilities that are going on, rather than, just being fixated on just common solutions like HRT or, whatever it might be, black cohosh or whether it's a herbal or whether it's a medicine. Yes, they might relieve a symptom, and you can't just let a woman walk out the door and think that's all that it's going to be. Like, that's it. It's not, because as I've listened and I've watched things evolve past then beyond, women need to be aware of that they do have a variety of options to help them that otherwise they may not necessarily come across with a 5 or 10 minute conversation with a GP, for example.
Yeah, that's so true. You mentioned when talking off air, and I'm going to cheat here. You were talking about some integrative medicine and some other testing that you do. Can you talk to us about some of those tests that you do that perhaps, another expert may?
Yeah, sure. So I use a lot of still standard blood testing, I suppose, to check hormones and things. But beyond that, if we're analysing hormone levels, for example, I might go a little bit deeper and do something like a dried urine test, for example. So you might have heard of a Dutch test before that can show.
Okay, tell us about that.
Okay, so a dried urine test, a Dutch test, you've heard of things like estrogen and progesterone and cortisol and testosterone and those sorts of hormones, right? Well, actually, what you can do with the functional testing and the dried urine testing and some other testing as well is you can actually look and see how those hormones are actually being broken down within a person's body, and what are the pathways that are working really well and what are the pathways that are working not so well. So rather than just focusing on estrogen, for example, you can actually start looking at all of the metabolites of estrogen, and you can look at the way, what's low, what's high, what are they lacking, what's blocking the particular chain, and it can give you much, much further information on where these disruptions are coming from. And particularly if we're looking at that, what I tend to see for a lot of women there's like an overreaching influence on their hormones is the way that their stress response system is working. The Dutch test can actually show certain types of stress hormones and the way that they're actually being converted in the body. So it just gives an extra layer, a deeper level of insight for a particular individual into how their hormonal health is actually being affected. And then, of course, if you have the knowledge, then what you can actually do is you can work out, depending on what the pathway is, what step in the pathway it is. A person might be lacking something. They might be lacking a certain type of B group vitamin, for example. They might have some inflammation that's pushing one particular pathway across to another that needs to be addressed. So you work on the inflammation. There might be a huge stress component there, which is playing a big drain on progesterone, for example, and so you need to work on that. You could have an issue with the adrenal system. So DHEA is one of the key hormones that measure adrenal function in a particular person, so how well they're responding to stress. And if that's flatlining, for example, then you go, right, okay, well, we need to really focus on that adrenal system and getting that up to speed and building that up for this particular person. So, yeah, it can give a lot of information that then opens up a lot of doors, a lot of options. And rather than just treating the downstream measure of estrogen, you can actually intervene further up the line and stop necessarily an issue with estrogen becoming a problem further upstream.
Wow, that's actually fascinating. Some of the stuff that I actually wasn't aware of. I'm pretty impressed. You and I might have some more conversations.
It's pretty cool. It's where functional testing really comes into its own, because what we're talking about here is really a functional issue for a person. Your body's changing. It's changing the way that it's another life stage, right? So it's not a disease. It's not a pathology. It's just a change. And so you shouldn't necessarily think of it as being there's something wrong with you. What you should be thinking about is, hey, this is happening. How can I best support myself to go through this transition? And so if you can get a proper analysis from somebody who understands what all of these driving factors are in your story, then you can make the necessary adjustments to smooth that transition across so that you're not feeling unwell, brain fog, hot, cold, et cetera, et cetera.
About pulling levers in all of those areas. The lady was like, can you just give me I'm listening to you right now in this podcast. Can you give me 3 tips that I can just pull levers on right now that might make a difference to myself, even without any kind of testing?
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest to the lady?
If this podcast is resonating, I'm Coach Terry Batsakis, a nutrition, mindset and health coach for women navigating perimenopause and midlife. I support women in managing hormonal symptoms, feel more at home in their bodies and move through this phase with confidence and clarity. If you need support navigating midlife, you can find out more about working with me at terrybatsakis.com.au.
Okay, so firstly, Hippocrates said a couple of thousand years ago, all disease or all health comes from the gut, right? And really not much has changed since then. But unfortunately, we've kind of gone away from, earlier last century, we went away from really looking at the way that the gut health impacts the rest of the body. Now, this century, we've started to actually get back to where we were and make a bit more emphasis, have a bit more of an emphasis on that with research. And, a lot of people are talking about it, for example, on Instagram or in research as well. And GPs are kind of getting the picture about it. So your gut health. So the first port of call that I always tell my patients is, how is your gut health? Like, what's happening there? Are you going to the toilet on a regular basis? Do you have any symptoms? Is everything fairly straightforward? Because your gut health is important for a variety of factors. And there's actually a part of your gut your gut's full of bacteria, right? It's got this thing called the gut microbiome. What we now know about our gut microbiome is it's full of these bacteria, and they do a lot of stuff that we didn't even realize before, and implicated in a lot of different conditions and diseases, even things like MS, Parkinson's, dementia, mood and stress, whole heap of stuff. Now, where it's particularly relevant for women going through transition, perimenopause, menopause, etc., is that the bacteria in your gut directly affect your hormone balance. Did you know that? So they help to influence how your hormones are being processed. So if you've got an issue to do in some form with gut symptoms on a regular basis, then you need to address that first, okay? So if you've got a gut issue, have a bit of a look at that firstly. Secondly, chronic inflammation plays a really key role in accelerated aging of the body, and it's responsible for a lot of chronic issues. and it is responsible for accelerated hormonal aging. So what I would say is that have a bit of a think about inflammation. It is something that can be measured with certain types of blood tests from a doctor, for example, but even look at your diet. Now, diet is the medicine that we eat every day or we take every day, more than once a day normally. And if your diet at a broad level is based on all sorts of whole foods, so stuff that you've bought from the supermarket, whole vegetables, whole fruit, protein, whether that be animal-based or whether that be plant-based as well, and you've put that together yourself and you've prepared it, then chances are you're following a less processed diet. And that is really the key, because the least amount of processing you can do in your food means that you're going to be, as a general principle, reducing inflammation in your body. The more processed food that you have, generally speaking, the more inflammation you're going to be creating in your body. And inflammation, as I said, is very, very crucial, has a huge impact on hormonal health. So have a look at your diet and have a look at, just broadly speaking, I mean, there are certain and specific things we can do with anti-inflammatory foods and all of that sort of thing. But just as a broad thing, have a look at what you're eating on a regular basis and just assess where it's at in terms of being processed. And then the third thing would
It's such a simple thing for people to change, isn't it? Like the concept of that is so simple, just choose less process. Like it doesn't even have to be completely no process, just minimally processed can actually make such an impact, doesn't it?
That's right.
Such a simple thing that you don't have to overthink.
No.
Sometimes we go through so many things it can become overwhelming.
That's right. And, for a lot of women, they'll come to me and they'll talk about foods and to do with seed cycling and all sorts of things in terms of how they can impact their hormone levels. And sometimes you can go down rabbit holes you don't necessarily need to go down. And that could cause other problems. So and that's one thing I always try to tell my patients is keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Just stick to the basics. Get the fundamentals right. If you want to build a nice house, right, you got to lay a slab. You can't just go whacking a roof on and putting some windows and hey presto. You've got to start from the bottom up. So if you want to build a better version of you, just start with the basics and do the basics well. All right.
Love it.
The third thing would be the impact that our stress response system has on our hormones. So and when I say stress, that can be in a variety of ways. People can not necessarily feel stressed, but there could be a lot of stress going on in their bodies. Like say, for example, if there was a lot of inflammation being caused by something, that increases stress. If their history, whether there've been unfortunate issues to do with trauma or some other factors, they might feel okay now, but when they were younger, their stress response system might have been pre-wired towards, being in that fight or flight mode, and they're kind of always on the lookout for threats. So the impact of that long term has a direct influence on their hormonal system. So that's really, really crucial and important to think about. So it's just about being honest, I guess, with people. If they think that they have had an issue with stress or that there's something going on there, then that needs to be addressed, because when the stress response system is up, the hormone system is out of whack. So that's really important to keep that under control.
Actually, you touched on something that's quite powerful there, our history. Can you talk to us about what kind of things we could have done in our younger years that could be impacting today? As an example, I know with me, I had an eating disorder as a teenager. I'm almost 53 now, so that's a long, long time ago.
Sure.
But I know that implications of anorexia for me at 16 have stuck around my entire life, for example. So that the things that it's impacted in my body, it doesn't heal that sort of stuff. So can you tell us about some examples of things that you've come across where perhaps a woman's history has impacted what she's doing now, and perhaps is there anything that she can do to, if not necessarily fix it, help it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I see a lot of women for whom something like that has happened and is part of their story. And it's really difficult, because if it's pre-wired, you also got to think about in all of those situations that there's a neural network, that there's a nervous system network that has occurred in their body and directly up to their brain, which is kind of set in stone there. And it's really, really hard to counterbalance that. So say, for example, you gave the example of the eating disorder. That can have a huge impact on gut health for a variety of reasons, whether it's starvation or purging or whatever it might be. It actually has a direct effect on the gut lining. So for a lot of these women, their gut lining, or the layer of their digestive system is really not strong, it's quite weak. And so they can run into a lot of issues with reflux, for example, or bloating excessively, or reactions to certain types of food, like food sensitivities. So in that case, it's really about trying to get that foundational layer of the gut healed as best as possible. And there are certain types of foods and certain things you can do to work on that and improve that. But that's one layer. But the other layer that I kind of mentioned first is the neural network. So there's I don't know if you've heard of Petra. She's an integrative gynecologist. She works, I think it's a Vera Clinic, Vera Wellness in Sydney, I believe. But anyway, she is a gynecologist, and she treats a lot of women with hormonal issues, particularly even things like your endometriosis, adenomyosis, and those sorts of things. Where there's been
have to look into them, Petra.
Yeah, she's really, really smart and very holistic. And there's been a bit of press, I don't know if you've seen it in the news recently, where there's been some gynecologists doing a lot of surgeries where they may or may not have been necessary. And even with the surgeries, the patients are still in pain. So if you're talking about that sort of thing, and she talks about her approach is to basically listen to a woman and listen to their story. And she actually can trace pretty much a lot of her patients who have got these hormonal conditions due to trauma and stress earlier in their life. And that could be quite significant. It could be even to do with sexual trauma or family issues, and then things that are quite horrible that a person had to deal with. But a lot of the patients have got that sort of basis, and then their hormones manifest over a period of time and cause these imbalances and drive a lot of these issues. And so for a lot of women, well, actually for most of her patients, she will look at hormones as being interplay between, yes, the hormones, but also the nervous system at the same time. And so even though she might be a gynecologist and adept at doing surgery or prescribing certain medications, she will always have counseling involved. She will always have somebody there to help with exercise. She'll always be focusing on stress management, lifestyle interventions, and diet and nutrition to help manage her patients, because it's not just about the hormones, it's about these other issues earlier in life. And so it's always something to think about, particularly for women. If you're not responding to your HRT that you've been prescribed, for example, what else could be at play there? What's happening with my stress response system? Is it possibly out of balance? Are there situations where you feel you have felt it might be work, for example? So you might be getting under the pump, or it might be at home. You've maybe trying to juggle both, trying to juggle the family, trying to juggle working as well.
Which is common.
yeah, right. The financial pressures, like, so for example, when we're recording this right now, we've got this domestic issue to do with the price of petrol and the price of fuel and the price of groceries and everything else. They've got financial pressures as well. There's a whole litany of things that women have to juggle and manage and deal with. And, your hormones are not exempt from those influences. Don't discount the power of those things and what the effect they can be having on you longer term. And to get the most out of whatever intervention you're doing, medication, supplement, food, etc., you have to think about your stress management. You have to think about, where do you get time for yourself? Can you get time for yourself? How do you do that? And what do you do? What works better for you? So some people will be really adept at meditation, for example, and they'll get right into it, and that's awesome for those people. Some people can't stand that. Like they'll sit there and they'll try and meditate. They'll give it 2 minutes and then, no, sorry, I can't do it. So
I'm one of those people. I have never been able to meditate until a few months ago, where it finally worked for me, after all these years.
That's awesome. That's great. It's good on you for persisting, right? So, but it's a skill. It's another skill. So it's the same as anything. Like riding a bike, you can't just jump on the bike and start to ride it. You've got to practice and be comfortable being uncomfortable, and then transition yourself to actually mastering the skill. But if you're persistent and consistent and dedicated, you can get there. And the science on meditation, reducing all those stress hormones in your head, and then doing that on a regular basis, the impact that not for one day, but over a period of time, the impact that can have on your hormonal health can be profound. And I've done lots of studies on that. Like the data's there. It's just not often being spoken about for women. And that upsets me a bit, because a lot of these things that we're talking about now, not necessarily in the common information domain, and they should be. And that's the reason, obviously, why you're doing this podcast, is to try and get these messages out there to women to help them.
Yeah, I love it. I can totally relate to that with regards to meditation not being something that's spoken about enough. And as a woman, I know with me, I kind of feel like I've always got to be on. I've always got to be running around. And a lot of women that I speak to say the same thing. We've got this pressure, especially since we, a lot of us work and raise a family and, perhaps run a business or manage a department or whatever.
Yeah,
But
right.
lots of responsibilities. We could be,
Yeah.
working with a charity, etc. And so you're always on and you go. And all of a sudden someone says meditate and you're like, oh, you're almost guilty because you feel like but that means taking some downtime,
Time for
and I'm
yourself.
supposed to be
Yeah.
go.
Mhm.
How many more balls can I juggle? And I know in the past that was definitely me. I know I have spoken with hundreds, thousands actually, over the years of coaching, thousands of women who actually feel guilty for taking some downtime. I've worked with a lady who we came to an agreement where she would take 10 minutes out every day and do something for herself, by herself. And she chose to sit in her wardrobe. She's got a walk-in wardrobe. She chose to sit in there in the dark and the quiet and
Right.
just breathe, which was her version of meditation. It was just, it worked so brilliantly. And so they all, the family knew as soon as the wardrobe door was closed, don't even think about it. So I was
That's
like,
awesome.
go girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for bringing meditation up. That's a really, really big one.
Well, yeah, and it's obviously quite cheap. So if you can do that sort of thing on a regular basis, you'll be helping yourself out in a number of ways, right?
Yeah, unlike our petrol.
Unlike the petrol at the moment, correct? Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, certainly not this one.
No, but you're right. Like so, and that's going to be different for some women. So for some women, it'll be just getting out, going for a walk, even just going for a walk around the block, somewhere where you can get out of your head for a period of time, get away from the kids or, whatever you have to do and let your partner take care of whatever's around the house where you can. And you have to work together. Also, don't just take this burden upon yourself. It's your health, it's your life, you're part of the family. If you're lucky enough to have one, you need help. And so your partner needs to be on board with this to help you. You need to talk about it so that when you need that time out, you can get it.
It's a real partnership.
If the kids need to get ready for better, younger family, whatever, and you just can't deal, well, they need to step in. You need time out, even if it's only 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it might be. It's really important because if you're on all the time, like a lot of women are, I'll catch up with you. And then if you go down, what happens to the rest of the ship? What happens to the rest of the ship, right?
Exactly right.
You're the integral unit. So it is important to recognize if that's happening and to be open and honest with your partners to try and get a chop out if you have one. If you don't, hopefully some family or friends can help you out, even if it's taking the kids to whatever so that you can go to the gym or whatever it might be. Just look for those little windows of opportunity.
Cool. Any final words of wisdom for our ladies listening?
Yeah, final words of wisdom. I wish I had some wisdom.
You've got heaps.
Look, don't overcomplicate your health. As I said, that's probably my main message is, look, don't overcomplicate things. Strip it back to basics. Strip it back to what you're eating on a daily basis, how you're living your life. Is everything in balance? Is your life in balance? Because if your life's not in balance, your hormones aren't going to be in balance. So just address some of these areas. Sleep, how's that? Exercise, energy levels, your food, your diet, work, home life. Is everything as it should be? And if it's not, make some adjustments. Because the longer you leave it, the harder it is going to be to fix it, right? And you do open the door, it's like a Pandora's box. You will open the door to some of these other problems down the track. So make a start early and there are lots of wonderful things that appear on the internet or on Instagram or via influencers and these wonderful products or drugs or supplements or whatever it might be, these cure-alls to help with transitioning through the midlife, and I wish it was that easy. It would be great if it was as easy as just taking one thing or just doing one thing and solving all your problems. And very often it's not. This is
It sounds too good to be true.
It probably is, right? So just remember that. And some of these things can help and they can be like game changers for a lot of women. I'm not discounting that, but just remember what's happening to your body is not an isolated, just a hormonal issue. Your hormones talk to everywhere. They talk to the way that your metabolism works. They talk to the way that your gut works. They talk to the way your brain works, your cardiovascular system, your bones, a whole lot of stuff. So don't ever think that there's going to be one magic cure-all. It's going to require certain tweaks to certain different parts of your body, and talk to somebody who's qualified, get some professional assistance with it if you can, like someone like yourself who's a coach, specializing in this field, or a practitioner, or a good GP who specializes in menopause and perimenopause, whoever it might be. There's different practitioners available in certain areas, or online now. You can access certain people all over Australia. So have a bit of a think about getting some advice, just making sure that you set up a plan for yourself that encompasses all of those areas, and then you're able to roll it out and you're able to implement it. Don't let it rule your life, but it'll really help if you do make some of those changes that you need to further on down the track. The sooner that you do it, the better.
Great advice. Absolutely love it. You have given us some huge little pearls of wisdom today. I'm very grateful. Don't ever doubt yourself with the wisdom.
Thanks, Terry.
And how can the ladies reach out to you?
So we've got obviously I practice this every day pretty much. So we've got our Living Holistic Health Clinic, so they can have a look at the website www.livingholistichealth.com.au, and feel free to reach out to us. There's a contact email there. You can click on that if you need some advice. Or we've got an Instagram page. Having said, don't check out Instagram. We've got an Instagram page, Living Holistic Health, a Facebook page, Living Holistic Health, and we've got a YouTube channel there as well. And we post, myself and the other practitioners just post heaps of like little short clips and videos and information. There's a ton of stuff on there. So feel free, and we've done that for a reason. We're trying to get to help people, even though they might not be able to see us all the time for a consultation or whatever. At least if we can get a lot of information out there to help people with something that they can get some make some changes, then they can access that. And that's all on the socials and on our website as well. We've got a fairly extensive blog post with different things. So hopefully they can get some value out of that.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. And I'll put all those handles and links in our show notes as well, so it'll be easier for everybody to access. Adrian, it has been an absolute pleasure. I will definitely be picking your brain again, that's for sure, and I'll be sharing that. And hopefully you'll be on the show again, because I think the ladies are definitely going to get a lot out of listening to some of the information that you have, if you'd be happy to join us again.
Absolutely, Terry. I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to support, obviously, what you're doing as well, because, it is crucial that this information does get out there to as many women as possible, because there's still a lot of women out there suffering needlessly, and it could be something quite simple, like doing some meditating. All right, that could make a huge change for them, and they never ever get told that. They never get access to that information. So hopefully, with this fantastic initiative that you're doing yourself with this podcast and other channels, we can get more of this message out there to help more people.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Okay, that was our interview with Adrian. He's an absolute whiz, as you've just heard. Thank you so much. We will leave it there for this week, and you can join us again next week for our very next episode of the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Batsakis. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for listening to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. Join me next time for more honest conversations about midlife and what's possible from here.